to not the cheeriest subject in the world, but a very important one. My name is Samsarah Morgan, and I am an interfaith minister. I'm a doula, childbirth educator, pretty much all things family kind of a person. A cute toddler person. Hello. I am a mom of 5 beautiful grown-up sons. I have 2 gorgeous grandchildren. And as a doula, I first experienced the birth of a child. It was my 35th birth, and I will never forget that. I know I'm close to 1,000 births. I'm proud of them. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. 26 more monkeys to go. And I'm gonna have a party. But that 35th experience was very profound and powerful, and actually was one of the catalysts that got me realizing that I really, really, really needed and wanted to be a midwife. So that story I'll share at another time, but I'll just say that I experienced the death of a baby professionally, and it's a profoundly moving, soul-wrenching thing. As a grandmother, one of my beautiful sons, Gregory, and his partner had a miscarriage of a baby daughter, and we went through that as a family. So I have the experience of a grandmother who lost a baby, and their baby she was just 22 weeks. So that was quite devastating, supporting a young family through that. We live in a country that is losing babies at a ridiculous rate. All the garbage that's on TV and it's on our radio and in our media, this really should be something that we should be focusing on, and we're just not. So I'm very grateful that we meet in little small rooms like this as like-minded, caring folks, and we put our attention on this, our attention and our intention on this matter, because ultimately small groups of people with good intentions have always been the ones who have changed things, right? At the end of the day. I am very blessed in the way that the Spirit moves in my life to have met this amazing, wonderful person, Nicole Vranas. And all kinds of magic went into how we met and how we connected with each other. And it turns out that we have similar fields of focus and desire to work on and heal. So this is our first collaboration together. This wonderful PowerPoint is all her work, because I can talk to you and I can pray and meditate with you and I can counsel you, but PowerPoint makes me want to cry. So I'm going to thank her for her hard work with that. We're going to talk about, when you read the outline for this class, or for this group, that was going to be the first generation of this talk. So there's going to be a few changes from what your expectations might be. So I just want to give you a little overview about what we're going to do together. Nicole's portion of the presentation is going to be looking at the problem. What is going on? We're going to focus on the African American community, because my community, we are the canaries in the coal mine. So no child, no race of child is doing well as far as mortality in this country. Unfortunately, though, African American babies are dying in the greatest number. Same with African American moms. So we're going to look at the canaries in the coal mine and then try to extrapolate from that. When you take care of the canaries, everybody gets to live long and prosper. Okay? So the first section is going to be her wonderful research for me. I wrote an article relatively recently. It was for Martin Luther King Day, and it was called Black Babies Matter. And Nicole did research for that article, which she's going to present to you now. And then I'm going to talk about more, when you look at the number of women, of families who've had a loss of a child, it's a lot of people. You can just, just extrapolate. You could be sitting in a room and the woman on either side of you could have had a miscarriage or a stillbirth. It's that prevalent. And so, yes, there are this greater systemic things that we need to do as a culture to prevent the death, And right now, while the death is going on, what can we do today to help the healing process of the people who've already experienced the loss? And that's what I'm going to focus on. And then I'd like to close us out with a healing meditation, and that will be our I hope everybody's had the opportunity to see the altar for this workshop. It is actually downstairs in the main marketplace, which I think is a beautiful place for it to be. And if any one of you has experienced the loss of a child, particularly little ones before their first birthday, please take the time to visit it. Folks are being invited to write down. They can write down the child's name or a little remembrance, or draw a picture or story and leave it on the altar. What I did when I came in this morning was to have a moment of just asking all the baby spirits to come play with us today. And so I've been telling people, if you notice your keys disappear, or there's a tug at your dress, something cute and magical happens, is because they've been here all day. Oh, poor little one. So make room for them. I think with that, I am going to turn it over to Nicole. I'll be back later.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we did this research, and what particularly made me interested in it is I have experienced a loss myself, very prematurely, and I was a college student at the time at the University of New Mexico, and I worked very closely with the African refugee community. And so I looked at a lot of statistics or correlations between the African American and African community, which also will be a few things noted here. So yes, I came to the Bay Area very excited to be a part of Berkeley, but things didn't quite turn out the way I wanted to. So I met this amazing lady, and I told her, some of what I was interested in. We shared a similar vision, and so here we are. So I will get into this research. We have a video clip that is like 3 minutes. So it's going to be just pretty much some statistics and the resources. Preterm implications. The infant mortality rate among Black infants is 2.4 times higher than that of white infants, primarily due to preterm birth. So, birthing a baby before the baby is fully developed. In 2012, preterm birth affected more than 450,000 babies. That's 1 out of every 9 infants born in the United States. So 1 out of 9, infants, that is quite a bit when we actually take the time to think about that. And we think about, why is this information not publicized? World statistics. The CIA publishes a list of world countries ranked by their infant mortality rates. At the bottom, with the highest rates of non-neonatal deaths, Afghanistan, Angola, Somalia. At the top, Monaco, Singapore, Sweden. Whereas the United States, it doesn't even crack the top 30, falling behind nearly all of its first world contemporaries. So we're told that we live in the first world and we have access to amazing healthcare, but that may not be so true to everyone. In my opinion and many others, I would call this racial disparity based on socioeconomics. It may be caused by socioeconomic disparities, not just in adulthood, but across the life course. Stress, discrimination, environmental quality difference as a consequence of residential segregation, pollution, crime, access to parks, foods, supermarkets, and also differences in infant sleep practices. We also spoke about sleep practices amongst African American people, and because we're so on edge, it's sort of hard to get the REM sleep that we need to heal and restore. So sleep practices from a adulthood to infants.
If I can also chime in here too, there's also a dysfunctional shaming around family bedding and family sleeping in a lot of African American families. Like you're not going to spoil the baby. And really one of the best ways to prevent SIDS is to have your kid in the bed with you. And I don't know why, there's a big new push now of doctors scaring parents away from sleeping with their kids. But, you know, indigenous cultures know, and sane practitioners know, that little newborns stop breathing often. And closeness with mom, access to her breast, access to her breathing pattern helps the little cuties remember to breathe.
Poverty and cuts in assistance programs. Recent increases in Black infant mortality also coincide with significant cuts in programs designed to assist the poor and erosion of benefits and jobs held by many poverty level workers. And then moving on, Blacks have consistently had higher infant mortality rates compared with other racial groups in the United States. This gap continues. During 2002-2004, nearly 14 Black infants died for every 1,000 births. So pretty much we heard that statistic, but there it is again for that period. And the group that is right there with us is Native American mothers. So that might be something notable.
For the same reasons?
For a lot of the same reasons, yeah, definitely.
If you look at the two groups that have, in my opinion, had the most crippling effects, firstly, First Nations people were the first people raped and tortured on the land. And then we had Black folks dragged over. So it makes perfect sense.
Wow.
We have a little video here. It's 3 minutes, so.
The Washington Post is reporting on a startling health crisis in this country. The number of women in the U.S. who die in childbirth is nearing the highest rate in a quarter century. An estimated 18.5 mothers died for every 100,000 births in 2013, compared with 7.2 in 1987. The Post reports that this translates to, quote, a woman giving birth here is twice as likely to die than in Saudi Arabia and 3 times as likely than in the United Kingdom. Washington Post reporter Danielle Paquette, who wrote the story, joins us. Danielle, in your piece, there's a startling line, and I'm just going to read it. It says, the United States is the only advanced economy in the world with a rising maternal mortality rate. What is going on in this country as opposed to other advanced economies that is causing this problem?
Well, Allison, this problem confounds a lot in the medical community. There's not one thing driving this problem. Experts I've spoken to tell me that certain parts of the country, there's gaps in health insurance coverage, especially in the South. For example, in Mississippi, with one of the highest maternal mortality rates, that the state did not expand Medicaid. There's something like 100,000 people who don't have access to any health care, and many of them are women. We have in Mississippi 160 doctors for every 100,000 residents. That drives part of this problem.
One of the interesting things in your piece is that the problems are described as preventable. So what's stopping people from preventing them?
Well, some doctors say it's something as simple as getting a routine checkup. So many women lack access to healthcare, especially in the South. And so maybe just something as simple as going to that doctor and saying, hey, something doesn't feel right, help me out. Another thing is a social reason. Oftentimes doctors will see women might say, something feels off, something's not right, and a physician might write that off as stress or perhaps just paranoia. And that same women, some nurses say, might go home and then she may enter premature labor and she may start bleeding. If she would have been at the hospital at the time of this, that could possibly save her life.
This makes me think that this is just a very stark example of the bigger issue. that certain populations in this country, based on whether it's race or based on economic standing, have better access to better health care.
It's incredible to see the numbers. Risk varies drastically by race. In some parts of the country, African American women are nearly twice as likely to die of pregnancy-related complications.
Daniel Paquette from the Washington Post, thank you for sharing your reporting.
Thank you, Allison.
The Washington Post is reporting.
I'm just going to chime in and say that this is the typical silly conversation that we see about this topic. And you know, the issue with Black women dying in childbirth, that is across socioeconomic lines. That's from the richest Black woman to the poorest Black woman. The number does not change. So it's not just about her access to going to the doctor. You know, there is something to going to the doctor and the doctor not really getting or listening or caring to a woman's concerns. But I think it's even more that you go to the doctor and the doctor never asks you what you're eating or how you're living. Are you mad at your partner? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you have a job? Do you have a home? And in some aspects, you don't want to tell your doctor all that. If you're a woman on Medi-Cal and you talk about that to your doctor, social services will come and take your baby away as soon as it's born. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's actually a lot of the research that I do too, is disparities in the adoption and children's services. So very startling, all of it, but yes.
So there's a piece of it is that they're afraid of being honest with their doctors for having child support service.
You're shamed for getting pregnant.
And being poor.
And being poor. Because who told you to have a baby? You're poor. And so if your food stamps run out and you don't have enough to eat, you just don't eat. That makes you prone to all kinds of things in pregnancy, including death. But if you go to the doctor and you say, doctor, I have no food, or I lost my housing, the doctor is not going to...
They're calling child support services. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
On a start.
So yeah, we know this. Recent studies show that U.S. overall has the worst infant mortality and maternal mortality rates among industrialized countries. Just reiterating what we just watched. The private nature of infant mortality has made it a quiet crisis, lacking the public discussion or high-profile campaigns that accompany cancer, autism, or postpartum depression. So there's also, just not a lot of information highlighting that. Our media is very centered on what it wants to be centered on. We don't hear statistics like that. I think that the majority of people, if they knew that, would be appalled. And furthermore, I think now that we are beginning to talk about this as women and to learn, that this is normally happening, we can gain strength from talking about it. Whereas we hadn't been discussing stuff like this and it's not brought to our attention, then it's just going to be an issue that goes unnoticed. How does this implicate things for people of African heritage generationally? Second generation African women now have the same infant mortality rate as their African American sisters. So once an African, and I think I also saw a statistic that says after a year, an African woman is in that same gap of infant mortality, unfortunately.
That's profound if you just let that resonate.
Yeah.
So a woman comes from another country and is here a year and is at this high risk.
Infant mortality is a hard topic to talk about in the Black community, the struggles that already exist. As you guys know, we're front and center for almost everything. And now our president and Michelle Michael, which is crazy, right? So yeah, with all these other issues sort of highlighted in the news and criminal marginalization of Black people, it's hard to talk about infant mortality in those rates. How do we start healing our community, address the issue? Let's try to consider the vulnerable place America is in with people of color, and try to be informed holistically and try to imagine the pain of women who have lost or made ulterior decisions, or have had to make ulterior decisions. These are my resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those were the statistics. I'll get those in.
Sounds good. So, I want to thank Nicole again, because that was a lot of good information, and a lot of troubling information too. Losing a child should be a very, very extremely rare and sad thing. Losing a mom in childbirth should be a very, very rare and extremely sad thing. We're built to have babies. Healthy women are built to have babies. And it's very interesting, like folks will be watching nature shows and they talk about the environment and, you know, when things are not right in a certain environment, how suddenly the females can't have babies, or their babies die, or they eat their babies, or, you know. But for ourselves, for as humans, we don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
That these things are happening because, like say in a rabbit warren, when systems are not right, and then all of the females suddenly can't have babies or their babies die, it's because there's something toxic in the warren. Our planet, our country is toxic on so many levels. It's toxic with regard to chemicals and body limit of chemicals that we all carry. It's the stressful lifestyles that we have to live in order to just make the minimal, comfortable living. We have to work so hard. And a society that is really focused more on money as opposed to our future progeny. We are not thinking the way First Nations or Indigenous people think. First Nations people, Indigenous people think 7 generations ahead. We are living in this time where we're just thinking right now for today. And there's no space in there for the tender nurturing of little baby humans. As a result of this, we have little ones that leave us before their first birthday. Infant mortality number counts children that die before their first birthday. You had your hand up.
I did. What are your thoughts about the birth community talking about infant mortality and maternal?
I think it's very important for the birth community.
But do you feel like that's actually an engaged dialogue that's happening? Because I am a certified bereavement doula, and people are like, what? I didn't even know that such a thing existed. I mean, I'm about a year and a half into my certification.
Good for you.
And I'm certified in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Good for you.
So
Perfect
yes,
for a
and
birth doula.
you know, I did this because I became a statistic in 2011, and I almost actually died. I was clinically dead, and so I'm here for a reason, and it really changed the way I couldn't go back and do what I did for 18 years in corporate America. And I'm half Puerto Rican, so I am ethnic, and that also for Latin and Caribbean countries Puerto Ricans have the highest percentage rate. Out of all of the Latin American and Caribbean countries, Puerto Rico ranks the highest. I didn't know this. And I have 3 older children, and now I have a rainbow baby.
Nice.
So, but it just was astonishing to me that throughout my 3 previous pregnancies and throughout the pregnancy with my twins, nobody talked about this. Risk factors, high risk factors, signs to look for, preterm labor, nothing.
We spend a lot of time on risk factors, but we don't spend a lot of time on what to actually do about them.
Yes.
We spend a lot of time scaring women to death and scaring men to death and scaring everybody to death. But in childbirth, the risk factors are relatively easily fixed if we lived in the same culture. Women need to have a warm, safe, dry dwelling. They need to have access to 100 grams of protein a day. Green leafy vegetables, whole grains, water. Lots of water.
Mm-hmm.
They need to do as our First Nations folks say. They need to walk in beauty. They need to see beauty. There's such profound wisdom in that. It sounds so simple.
Yes.
But, you know, in this culture, we're not about beauty. Like, even what you watch on TV, even what you're taking in, it's just, you know, your pregnancy needs to be a time when you unplug from that. Because there's a little being being formed inside of you that is part and parcel of every thought, every breath. You know? This culture is incredibly frightened of death. And so we don't talk about it.
But the news wants to highlight it. Like,
Yeah, but they highlight brutal, scary
Right.
death.
Yeah, the news.
Yeah.
So there's also this piece about sometimes you do everything right, quote unquote, and the baby will die. Perfect, wonderful pregnancy, you know, the baby that died in my professional life as a doula, it was a home birth. It's a beautiful home birth. The mama had done everything right. Checked off, she had charts in her kitchen where she checked off her supplements every day and how much she ate, and loving parents ready to receive this beautiful child, older siblings ready to play, and this beautiful little boy was born. He never took a breath, he never opened his eyes. He was one of the most beautiful babies I'd ever seen. And he had just gone right back to where he came from. Now, no one's at fault for that. But we're not talking about that. That, to me, is the incredibly rare, incredibly sad moment. When we're talking about birth, we need to talk about death. They are sisters. So these things should always be discussed, the possibility, and not to scare our moms, to let them know that nature is totally on your side, though, girl.
Mm-hmm.
Nature wants babies, you know? But nothing is guaranteed. My next second is not guaranteed. And that's a hard concept for us to rock. It's scary. That's why, you know, a lot of us have our good, you know, spiritual practices and community and whatever, you know, our belief systems that help us deal with the reality of that. But nothing is guaranteed. We just do our very, very best. So I want to spend some time talking about how we as a community can address and respond to the loss of a little one. I'm including miscarriage, stillbirth, SIDS. I'm including an abortion that the mom didn't want to have, but she felt she had to because she didn't have a choice. We recently went through that with one of my young, sweet clients who searched high and low. She had already had one beautiful son, and she worked so hard to find the resources. I cry when I think about that. She wanted very much her second child, but she felt she had to be responsible. And she went to the people that she thought she could trust to ask for support, and they told her, well, we'll support you if you turn your child over to us, and we can be the foster parents and collect the foster care money. So I can have my baby and give it to you, and you'll help me. So she had an abortion, and she was devastated. So for the purpose of this group, I'm going to, because you know there's controversies that I don't have, but there are controversies in the world about what is a baby. But for the purpose of this class, we're going to deal with from the start of conception. Makes life easier for this conversation. Baby. So if you just, you know, a woman can have a miscarriage very early, and that's still a loss to her. If she perceives it as a loss to her, it's a loss. And so how do we as a community respond to that loss? How can we be a force for healing in the world? The loss of a child is an abomination. An abomination is something so horrible our brains can't even hold it. That's part of why we act so ridiculous as a culture when someone loses a baby. We just don't know what to do. Our brains seize up because really in the actual plan of things, what we feel should have happened is not happening. Someone's pregnant, you should have a baby. You have a baby, it should grow up. So the parents are rocked and the community is rocked because of the sheer magnitude of what has happened. It tears at the heart of the community. So as a result, we tend to shut down the grief of the family because it just hurts us so much. Okay? Especially if it's a baby that wasn't even showing. Like, oh, it was nothing. Our community shutdown is, of course, very unfair to the grieving family, and it actually can interfere with their ability to grieve. We have to go through a process of grief in order to get to a point where we can come to acceptance. That's so pretty. How can you support another's grief? Before you do something, it's important for you to check in with yourself. We talk before we think, we act before we think in our culture, and then we end up feeling foolish, and the other person gets upset, and they befriend us on Facebook, and it's just a mess. Oh my God. What can you do? The first thing to do is to check in with yourself. How do you feel about what has happened? It's actually not selfish to do this. It is smart to do this. To take a few moments and to check in with yourself. Oh, my dearest girlfriend's baby died. How do I feel about that? Oh my God, that was my godchild, I was the auntie, or I was going to be the auntie. She was pregnant. You might give yourself time to have your tears about that. That's your loss too. It's not for her to deal with. You don't go tell her, oh, I was gonna be the auntie. No. Right? You might get another friend who can be there for you, because that's real, that's important. You need to say that to somebody. I was looking forward to being that baby's auntie. I bought little baby clothes for that baby. That's real. Get that support, so that then you be clear to be there for your best girlfriend. You know? What are your resources? Check in with yourself. How do you feel when other people are crying? How do you feel if people around you feel the need to scream and wail? Because actually, that's one of the most appropriate things that a mom, for sure, and the mom and dad can do if they have a dead baby, is to scream and wail. And how comfortable is that in this culture? No. How do we let that happen? Mm-hmm. Actually, you're supposed to be so noble that you don't cry. This is one of those things that really pisses me off. This is not infant mortality, but this is mortality of young people. We have these beautiful young men gunned down by police in our culture, and the parents get praise for standing stoically there. Look at them, they're so noble. I'm like, you know what? I hope those people are screaming and wailing at home, because the depression and the sickness that comes from unexpressed grief, that will put you in the ground, will make you sick. You gotta have some place where you can go and scream and yell and curse and not be all nice about the fact that your beautiful child is dead. What if the person you're trying to support shuts down? Can you be with them in their silence without abandoning them, without getting mad at them? Here's some things to not do and say. Please do not say it will be okay. It will not be okay. It will never be okay. Ever. Never. It is something that they will have to learn to live with. It is something that if they go through consciously, it can transform them. It can help them be bigger, better people. But this is not the time to tell them that. Because right now it sucks. It's the biggest, most horrible pain that you can ever have. The hole has been punched into this family, and although they will learn to live with the loss will always be there for them. If they have 100 children, one is missing. When the child dies, please don't say, I know just how you feel, because you don't. Even if you yourself have had a similar loss, you had your loss. One of the things that happens in our culture is that we have so many people who've had loss that when someone else has their loss, they take it as their opportunity to try to get to talk about what happened to them. And that's true about a lot of things. Get your own support for your own loss. Fight for it if you have to. Call me, I'll be there for you. Talk to you. But when someone else is having their experience, it needs to be all about them. You cannot possibly know what they are feeling. You can ask them to tell you though, and that would be very helpful. Now is not the time to process your own loss unless you are directly asked about it. If the grieving family asks you, how did you feel? That's your opportunity to briefly share and then invite them to keep sharing. Next please. Greedy. When the child dies, please don't say it was meant to be. Please do not assume to speak for your opinion of God's will. It's one of those things that people do, thinking that it will make things better. It just never does. And you know, in the case of a lot of infant mortality, I don't think it's actually God's will, in my humble opinion. I think it's our crappy, stupid society causing babies to die.
Right.
I think God rages with the parents, often. So, no, people try to comfort, and I've seen families turned away from their faith because of big things being said, like, why would God take my baby? And you know, I don't think that God did, but that's not, you know, that's not the point. So just leave it out there. The family can make their own determination. If the family is saying that, then that's what they believe. If that's comforting them, that their baby's in the arms of God, great. We don't need to think that. I mean, clergy is really ridiculous about this. I talk to clergy people all the time, like, just pray, you know? Just pray. Praying's nice, helpful. You know, family is grokking and working with these issues, and they will get to this based on their belief system as best they can, depending upon where they are in the grief process. Even if you share the same spiritual tradition of the family, I recommend avoiding saying that. Let them say it to you. Please do not say you can have another child. It's not like a broken toy. And if you really love a toy, you know that you can't replace the toy either. But you really can't replace a beautiful little human that you grew in your body for 9 months. You know? Or, you know, your child is irreplaceable. Children are not replaceable. The family may go on to have many other children, yet not one of them will replace their lost child. Next year. When a child dies, please don't say you will get over this. No, they won't. They can heal. It will take a long time. And then there'll be birthdays and special occasions, pregnancies and births of their friends and family that might re-stimulate their grief. And that's okay. That's life. If each one of these situations may be something that they may need to reach out for support again. Shed some tears about it. Tears are healing. They're actual chemicals in tears that help normalize brain chemistry. That's why it's really important to cry when we have experienced a pain or a trauma. Crying and shaking is something that our autonomic nervous system automatically does when we are frightened or stressed, and just doing that actually helps reorganize and balance brain chemistry. What we do in our culture is we stop people from crying, and we stop them from shaking. So people stay stuck. That's our body shaking off emotion. Let ourselves do that. Please don't tell them to look on the bright side. Right now there is no bright side. It will take a very long time before there is one. While it's ultimately true, the great spiritual truths that things happen that bring lessons and opportunity for growth, this is not a time for the community to be putting this on people. This is a realization that families need to come to on their own. Next. Words and actions that can help and heal. Ritual, tradition. Depending upon what you know of the family's belief system, encourage them to use those tools that they believe in. You know? You can also work with the family to develop new rituals of goodbye and grief if they don't have a spiritual connection in that way. They don't have a tradition that they strictly follow, or a formal religion. If they're spiritual folk, then help them do some research to find out what spiritually would work. What do they want to do? They want a gathering of friends. Do they want to have their little ones' ashes? What do they want to do? Help them think that through. When people have a spiritual tradition or a religious tradition, they kind of fall right into that usually, and generally they're cared for. So like if you go to your church and your baby's died, there's a whole system that kind of brings into place to help you through that funeral.
You're giving me a little bit of goosebumps because literally we just published a 4-part series on loss that I wrote. Doula's that I worked on for a year.
Excellent.
And I'm just like, I mean, all of this, and we have advice for friends and family in there, and it was not an easy piece to publish. But I'm like, people need to know.
People need to hear it.
They need to know. And if you don't want to talk about it, then read it. I hope that this is in print somewhere.
Let us hope. One good thing about good ideas is that I know I'm not the only person talking about this stuff.
Yes.
It's important. One of the most important things that you can say, and I trained myself to do this. I trained myself a long time ago, I'm completely trained. If someone reveals a loss to me of any kind, my first words out of my mouth is, I'm sorry.
Yes.
My mother died. I'm sorry. Just like you train yourself to say bless you when someone sneezes, these little things are very important.
That's the magic word is, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm here for you. That's what I say. Those are the 3 magic phrases. There's nothing else. There's nothing else that you could say. Any type of loss, though.
Exactly. What can we do to help you? What do you need? Not what do I want to do. What do you guys need? You know? Understand the family may not know what they need. Be prepared to ask this question gently more than once as the family gradually connects with this information. It takes a while. And what they want one day might be not what they want the next day. Go with them. Let them guide the energy. Feel free to gently make offers. Food, drink, company. Do not take it personally or show offense if your offers are refused. People do that, and it's very sad. Well, I'm trying to help you. Who's it about? You or the bereaved. Let them have the space to say no today and maybe yes tomorrow. When you're feeling like you have no control, when your baby is dead, you have no control over anything. Sometimes you just say no because you fucking want to say no about something. Let them have that. Next, please. Aw, look at the angels. Those are pretty. I'm seeing this PowerPoint for the first time, as you can tell. Words and actions that can help and heal. We care about you. We love you. These are incredibly healing words. Back them up with solid actions. Please don't make promises to a bereaved person or a bereaved family and then not follow through. Please don't do that. They've been through enough. Only do what you can. We're not responsible for doing any more. But if you say you're going to do it, please do it. If you must break your word, speak to them, make amends. Don't get passive aggressive and hide from them. You know? Truly do your best to keep commitments made to people experiencing profound grief. Or not profound grief. Next, please. Encourage talking about the child. Talk about the pregnancy. Talk about how it was. Talk about the little one. We're talking about a young child now, under a year old. The parents have lots of memories. Tell us about your little one. share memories. Oh, when you were hanging out and the baby spilled the milk and how cute that was and how everybody laughed and you cleaned up the milk. You know? What are these beautiful things about this baby? What did you love most? What will you miss? Why should we do that? Some people think it's cruel. We're opening up all that. Baby's dead. Move on.
People don't want to remind parents of it. Parents don't need a reminder. They remember every day.
They'll never forget.
I have a friend who lost and is still dead and scarred. For a year or two, she was very open in talking about it, and people kept telling her to stop talking. So when I acknowledged her baby on the 3rd anniversary, the 4th anniversary, she said that I was one of the only ones. She didn't need me to remind her. She just needed somebody to remember and to remind her.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
My little spirit baby.
Mm-hmm.
Because remembering them's the next best thing.
Amen.
People are afraid that they're going to bring the pain back, but the pain's already there.
Exactly.
They
That
will
is
not
the
bring
point.
the healing.
And that's what we do with any other deceased person, though. It's
Mhm.
interesting how we don't do this with kids and babies.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone would sit around telling stories about Grandpa.
Exactly.
I loved you, Grandpa. Remember when he did that? We went fishing. Everybody
Yes.
will do that. But a child, we not, because it's such an abomination. And we end up causing so much harm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. If we don't appear open for this information, the parents don't have permission to talk about their child. We want to be a community that has that open door where if the parent wants to talk about the child, they will. And if they don't, they'll say, I don't want to talk about that right now. No harm, no foul. I think it's sweet how you remember the anniversary. That's an opportunity for the parent to talk about it if she wanted to, and at the very least feel like, oh, thank you, you remember. Very sweet. Next week. Remember birthdays and death anniversaries.
Mm-hmm.
After things have gone back to normal for the rest of the world, the family's still grieving. Often it's only the family who remember the little one's birthday or death anniversary. A card, a hug, or flower, take her out to brunch, take mom and dad out to brunch, can be a sweet observance of that child now an ancestor. Yeah. Remember Father's Day and Mother's Day. I've had mamas ask me, am I a mom? I lost my baby. I had a miscarriage. Am I a mom? Absolutely. You're a mom. I would send a pretty little card or a flower or come by with a little carnation. So, you know, on all the diners and cafes, all the mothers get carnations after they have their meal, right? Bring your friend a carnation.
Mm-hmm.
Although a baby has died, a parent was yet born. That's for papas too. Men get forgotten in this process. And men are taught to suck it up and be brave and strong. And then what happens is they start acting crazy. And they can be very abusive to their partners. And things get whacked in relationships. It's a huge cause of separation and divorce, the loss of a child in a marriage. Because folks are not taught how to process together. The female partner tends to want to cuddle up and talk about the baby and process. And the man's like, I can't do this. Because in my whole life as a man in this culture, I am not taught to deal with all of this.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting how men feel responsible for the death of the kid. Somehow they make it about them. They didn't do something. So when their partner is crying, they feel like they're a bad man. They can't make it better for her. And they end up being mean to her. It's bad. Heartbreaking. The baby's part of their life forever. Remember to check in with the family, a phone call, invitation to brunch, all are appropriate. Although they may bring tears, these are healing tears. If you're unsure, ask them how they feel about your intention to honor their child and their parenthood. If you feel uncertain about it, I'd love to take you out for brunch on the day our little angel went to heaven. How do you feel about that? Many of my clients have told me how they appreciate the intention of a friend and family member who shows such compassion and respect. Even though they might say no, they still appreciate that you wanted to do that. And next year, when you ask them again, they might say yes. We as a community can honor, we as a community can honor the parents as parents. We ought to honor their lost young one as a part and fabric of our community. As we were prepared to welcome them through the pregnancy and through life, that little one is still part of the tribe story. And we will try to not forget that. My favorite flower. Death of a baby is a death of hopes and dreams. With compassion, time, and respect, the grieving family can slowly begin to dream again. In the loving embrace of their community, they will slowly expand into life as it is. Sweetness can and will return, and the bonds of love will be tempered by the effort. If we can consciously go through the difficult things in our lives, we get to be stronger, bigger people. And we are not designed to do that all by ourselves. We are primates. So if we want to know how we should be living, we should look at our other primate cousins. And what are they doing? They snuggle up together. They take care of each other. You can even see a video recently where a mom chimpanzee had lost her baby, and all the other females were taking care of her. So pure. So sweet. In the animal kingdom, we could do that. Somehow we get civilized and we forget all these things. Yeah. I wish you peace. So, and I truly do. I truly wish everyone peace. And there are many groups, midwives and birth workers and healthy government folks, healthy medical people who are looking at this issue. And we need to keep their feet to the fire, because what needs to happen is, in my humble opinion, we need to get the corporate money stuff out of our medicine. You know, the countries that have the best outcomes for their moms and their babies are countries that don't have corporate-driven medicine, corporate-driven science, and all this other stuff. So we need to follow the examples of the countries that are doing it right. You know? In the meantime, as active birth workers in the field, it's important for us to have this information. Other wonderful articles are also being written, shared amongst ourselves. And so we're the first line soldiers. If you're a nurse, if you're a doula, midwife, I think it's important in prenatal care to talk about the possibility of death, help families access their resources. If the baby died, God forbid, what might you do? Who would you call? What would you, just have them thinking about it. Because sometimes, because we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to think about it, it's a massive blow if it did happen. It's just not even, you know, we're almost guaranteed, like OBs almost guarantee you that if you do everything right and you go through your prenatal appointments, nothing should happen. That's not necessarily true. Especially since they're not talking to you about the fact that you're living on Doritos while you're Go to every prenatal appointment, it's amazing. You go to your appointments, and I see it a lot as I work with beautiful young teen moms. They could be eating Doritos every day. They gain weight. You have a nice little belly. It's all Doritos, though. So in their last few weeks of pregnancy, when their blood pressure spikes, or they are found to be gestational diabetic, everyone's shocked. But if you've been tracking the fat, that's why midwives are wonderful. I know midwives, every time you see a midwife, she's like, what did you eat today? Big smile. Hi, write down for me what you've eaten in the past 24 hours. Burn, says the pregnant one.
What little things like that? I mean, it's such an easy exercise to do. I mean, I need it for myself every day because it's like,
We all need a mama.
seriously, you get me a little PMSing and I'm like, I I want my cupcakes. And not one, I want like, 5 of them. If I wrote that down and actually looked consciously, I would be like, oh, not good. Like you would already know.
We would all be healthier if we
Mm-hmm.
did that.
Yeah.
Whether we're pregnant people or not pregnant people, we would all be healthier if we tracked that. Because really, my granny used to say, bless her smart self, food is our first medicine. Food is our best medicine.
Mm-hmm.
We eat well and exercise. We won't need a whole host of pharmaceuticals that they're waiting to give us. It's really true. And also in a lot of cultures, African culture, Latino culture, African from, not African American, African from Africa. In those cultures, China, in those cultures, when mamas get pregnant, they don't feed themselves. They don't do anything for themselves. Mother-in-law, the mama, the aunties, the women mobilize. Boom. Food magically appears in front of her face. She is told to eat it. And she's been told to eat the indigenous foods that have helped her people live on the planet since the first of her people.
Postpartum also.
And especially postpartum. There's all kinds of beautiful things. We completely forget our women postpartum. You know, and that 40 days where you just stay in bed and you don't pick up anything heavier than your baby, and your family mobilizes. The village brings you food. You stay in your tent. You stay in your hut.
Chicken soup.
All kinds of yummy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cook up some placenta. Some people are cooking up some placenta.
That's very important after a miscarriage as well.
Exactly.
They gave birth.
That is a birth. After a miscarriage, that is postpartum. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I wish everyone peace, and I wish for, what tends to happen at workshops like this is that like-minded people come and listen to other like-minded people say the same stuff. And that's fine. Because I think it's like a recharge for like-minded people to do that. To go out into the world and feel supported in spreading the good common sense that we know we need to spread. And making the time for, things that are difficult, but once we, just like labor. Labor's hard work. And if we go through it consciously, we come out the other end as women, we're bigger women, no matter how it turns out. It's a beautiful chapter in our life. Every second of our life, we want to be impeccably aware and present of it. It's our own precious life. I have the belief system that I'm raised Catholic, and I'm still a practicing Catholic. And, when you lose a baby under 1 year old and you're Catholic, you have a Mass of the Angels. And the Mass of the Angels is not for the baby. The Mass of the Angels is for the parents. The belief system for a Catholic is that the baby's gone to heaven. And heaven's a good place. Heaven's beauty and peace and oneness with the Creator. Little babies didn't even have a chance to be here to be unconnected. So for the death of an infant is very sweet. They just go right back to their primal force. And so the belief is that the baby is in good hands. The baby is asked to pray for its parents in the Mass of the Angels, which I love. So we ask the little one to look after us. That's what ancestors do, yeah? Whether it's a little baby ancestor spirit or a grandpa. Once they get to the other side, if that's what our belief system is, people nodding their heads, so we're pretty in line here. They are where they are, caring about us. They are where they are, wanting us to do well. They become energy to us. We will never forget them. What is remembered lives. Yes.
I feel compelled to share
Please.
that women who have had an abortion that they did want also oftentimes go through grieving and also need support.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important to acknowledge, just because they chose and wanted to have
it's something that I feel in my heart, and it's a difficult challenge because the headline about that is that, well, the empowered woman made her decision and she's fine. I haven't witnessed that. I have witnessed women making the decision that they felt that they was the best for them, not my sweet little client who was decimated. I have seen women who felt this, they felt strong in their decision, but still, as you were saying, still have a grief process.
Yeah.
And who do they talk to?
And there's so many factors that can contribute to that.
Exactly.
Or, it could be that they had a really terrible experience of their abortion. It could be that they were just completely blindsided by how they ended up feeling about it. And
it's such a blanket term, though. I mean, even if it's medically necessary, I have a friend who had an IUD. She got pregnant in the 9th year of her IUD, and they couldn't get it out, and she continued with the pregnancy. And about halfway through, the IUD hit her uterus and caused sepsis. And so if she
please don't do
didn't,
that to yourself.
if she didn't have, it was medically necessary, but they're calling it an abortion. But she was like literally hours away from death because her whole body was going into septic shock.
Wow.
And it's just such a blanket term, whether it's a personal decision because of the situation you're in, the circumstances surrounding.
If you have
the
a child that's found to
pregnancy.
have some sort of genetic issue and you choose to terminate the pregnancy,
It all deserves support.
It all deserves support. Parenting in all of its facets deserves support. There's no issue around being a parent that doesn't. No judgment. No whatever your personal agenda is needs to be left at the door. It's like, who are they and what do they need if we're going to be good caregivers to each other? Sometimes when we do that, we're surprised what the other person will share. You can find out stuff about a friend that you never knew about her before. And it's good to know those things if you're really going to be friends as opposed to surface connection.
Another thing that just popped into my head, and when you were talking about, saying how can I help, and I do think that a lot of times closed-ended questions are really helpful. I had a full-term fetal demise myself, and it was the people that said, can I do X, Y, Z, that I was able to just, when you're able to just say yes or no, instead of having to think of what they can do for them, is really helpful. And also I think for anyone pretty much, if going through this, if someone can organize donation collection of money because they're gonna miss work, and the more money that we can throw at them, the longer they can take to themselves to stay at home.
That's beautiful.
I feel like that was really important. It's not something that I expected or asked for from anyone, but we had a bunch of people give us money, and it helped us to be able to stay home for like 3 weeks.
Excellent.
And just process. And
Also,
really good.
depending on if you have a baby, not a baby in the body, funeral costs, cremation costs.
Yep.
People are not thinking about having funeral money for their little baby.
Yeah.
So yes, money is good, time is good, food is always good. Food is very nurturing.
Yeah.
And I would say be flexible with the open and closed questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends on what people need. Sometimes they feel that they need to be in control and say, do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need to have suggestions. Be flexible. Be flexible.
If I can say some more words.
One more thing, because we have to wrap
Okay.
up.
Just on the funeral note, another thing is to really be aware of what their options are and that there's no rush.
Exactly.
There really isn't. There's a lot of things you can do to keep, you can take baby home from the hospital and keep the baby with you for a few days if you want.
Good for you.
And
Good for
that's
you.
something I didn't know, and I really wish I had. And
That is a very, very good point. I'm going to add that to this PowerPoint.
home
Another
funeral
thing I want to
options.
add too is around miscarriage and not having to go to the hospital. Find a midwife.
Home funeral. There's
Have your
a
own,
Home
yeah.
Funeral Alliance website. There's all sorts of resources online that that's really huge.
That is a very good point. And also remember, I just want to say that again in case it didn't get heard, that you do not have to miscarry in the hospital. You can find a home birth midwife. I would have somebody keeping an eye on you.
Yes.
And I think, what I know of midwives, that's something that they would do, and they wouldn't charge you for that.
Mm-hmm.
They would just do that
So much.
as part of their commitment to women.
What was it called again? Home funeral.
Home funeral. I think there's like Home Funeral Alliance of North America or something like that online. It's a lot of
So-
information.
Thank you.
Really, would you be a doll and email me that information?
Absolutely.
Would you please?
And then you
We
have
need to end.
miscarriage midwives, you said?
Any home birth midwife,
Any.
I would be shocked if you called a home birth midwife and said, I think I'm miscarrying, and she wouldn't come and help you.
Yeah.
There's also Law
I do
Schools International.
And photos.
Oh,
My
take
friend
photos.
only had about 3 photos, and then she found out about now I'm down to sleep, and I was
Mhm.
out of birth.
Yeah.
But the baby did not survive. And if you are honored to be in that space, it is a hard space to be in, but if you're honored to be in that space, it feels almost like an intrusion to be taking the photos. But I told them as I'm taking them, I said, I'm going to step back, I'm going to take these photos, and you may not want to look at them, but they're yours to have when you're ready to process them.
One of the things that hospitals have really gotten good at, probably because it happens so often under their noses, you can't help but tell because, is handling a miscarriage, handling the remains of a little baby. I've seen them do really beautiful things, like what with my little granddaughter who died. She was 22 weeks. And my daughter-in-law got to see her. They wrapped her in a little blanket, put a little hat on her. We did take pictures. And that's gorgeous. Because moms need to deal with the denial that this has really happened, that the baby's really dead. Moms will ask to see, kids of all ages, I want to see him. Because it's such an abomination that she's got to lay her eyes on her. And people are like, why do you want to see? No, I'm his mother or her mother. I need to see my child. That's so critically important. Folks need to see when they're miscarrying, to be able to see the little pieces and parts of their baby. That's theirs. They made it. It's their child. We have the right to see it. We're supposed to have it all swept away from us. Yes.
I would just like to say that I come from a younger community, and I've seen a bunch of different kind of losses with babies, especially like abortions and like miscarriages, and also preterm, like having people have babies at a really young age, and I feel like they don't get that support as much as people who are older. So I feel like that's really important and that needs to be talked about,
Absolutely.
especially in like the Black community.
Do you think it's part of feeling that, well, the young woman shouldn't have been pregnant or shouldn't have had the baby?
Yeah.
It's
She
amazing how
doesn't deserve
punishing people
reason.
can be. It's just really cruel. Like I've had Black mamas say to me, like when their daughter's in labor, like their 16-year-old's having a baby, she's like, I hope it hurts. Like, wow, mama, come on.
Wow.
You won't do that again. There's such shaming in the African American community on our sexuality and our fertility. And so we as women of color have to heal that for ourselves. It's amazing how culture A rapes culture B, but then culture A talks about how sexy, it's over-sexualized and horrible the culture that they're raping is. It's just like they get blamed. Or like the same with any perpetrator. Why did I rape her? Well, she had the red dress on. It's her fault for wearing that red dress. Whatever. It's just so sad. So it's particularly painful. I'm hearing you talk about it. Particularly painful to see, young women shamed for being young.
I've seen that with my teen moms for sure, with the nurses and some of the shadier hospitals, just the shaming that they're using
It's
just
like,
with their language. It's just,
when back in 1979, when I had my twins, I wasn't the only 19-year-old having some twins. I was married when I was 18, my first marriage. That wasn't even all that unusual. People were like, well, you're gonna eat tuna for a couple years. But it wasn't like, but it was also very interesting that when I went into my clinic appointments, I watched every single time. If it was a new nurse working with me, her eyes always went to my left hand to see if there was a ring on it. And you could feel the shift in her energy. So she'd look at me, and she'd look down at my left hand, and she saw a wedding ring. Hi, Mrs. So-and-so. But if that ring wasn't there, I wonder how I would have been trying to treat her. So we just need to get off that. Patriarchy works by making women attack women, making mothers attack daughters, sisters attack sisters. We have to shake all that stuff off so we can be free beings. You know? So we do need to wrap up. Anybody who wants, there is a meditation that I have came to me in my dreams that I wanted to share, but we are past time. So if anyone would like the MP3 of that meditation, email me and I'll send it to you. The purpose of it is for you to share with a client. And it's a fresh grief meditation. And one of the things that mamas do when they're in pain is they kind of sit in the corner and they rock. So this meditation is thinking about your baby, loving the baby. I love you, my baby. Be well where you are. Be well, my ancestor baby. I love you, I love you. So, I'll make you cry. But it's to encourage healing tears. So, listen to it. If you find it helpful for anything you're going through in your own life, if you think it would help a client or a friend, share it with them. Any questions for me or anything moving forward in the future, if I can help you in your wonderful work, I do provide grief counseling as part of my practice. As I said, I'm an interfaith minister and counselor, family life coach, parenting coach. I'm a doula. I just midwife. And basically I'm the jack of all trades with regards to families and kids. So please feel free to recommend me because I would love to do my 1,000th baby this year. And I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much.